As an addendum to my first video, which demonstrated my process, creative process, I will attempt to go through and explain what I've gained or what knowledge I've been exposed to in completing my 4 models. And I'll give you a look of the 4 models completed. And then I'll go through and explain each. All right, so here we have the lateral view of the left hemisphere with, I'll use my pen, at the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe, pons, cerebellum, which are part of the mesencephalon, which is why that's here. All right, we've got the superior frontal gyrus and the superior frontal sulcus here, attempting to make my grooves and my hills here. We've got the middle frontal gyrus, the precentral sulcus, the precentral gyrus, the central sulcus here, the inferior frontal sulcus, and the inferior frontal gyrus. Okay. We've got the postcentral gyrus, the postcentral sulcus, superior parietal lobule, the interparietal sulcus, supramarginal gyrus, inferior parietal lobule, and in the occipital lobe we've got the occipital gyrus, occipital gyrus or gyri, and the preoccipital notch here. In the temporal lobe, we've got the superior temporal gyrus, superior temporal sulcus, middle temporal gyrus, middle temporal sulcus, inferior temporal gyrus, and again labeled the temporal pole here. All right. In the frontal lobe, we've got the Broca's area. Where's my pen? Okay. Well, let me explain first. We've got the cerebral cortex, okay, in the brain, which is divided into the motor areas, the sensory areas, and the association areas. Okay. In the Broca's area, which is concerned with production of speech, and about 97% of the people on the planet, this is located in the left hand side of the brain. Okay, we've got the primary motor cortex, which controls voluntary movement of the opposite side of the body, and since this is the lateral view of the hemisphere, this side will control the right. We've got the primary somatosensory cortex, which receives information from the sensory receptors on the opposite side of the body, and again, since this is the left hemisphere, it will receive information from the right side, having to do with receptors about the body as far as touch, pain, temperature, and the position of joints and muscles. Okay, and this primary somatosensory cortex is caudal to the central sulcus. The Broca, which I didn't mention, is anterior to the cerebral cortex, rostral to the parietal lobe, and dorsal to the temporal lobe. Let's see. We've got the auditory association cortex, and this is concerned with the interpretation of the meaning and significance of sound. And we've got the primary auditory cortex, which processes basic features of sound such as pitch and rhythm. The primary auditory cortex is located deep in a lateral fissure of the inside brain. And the auditory association cortex which is located in the temporal lobe. Caudal to the frontal lobe, and dorsal to the temporal lobe. Okay. Then we've got the visual association area, which is concerned with recognizing the meaning of visual information and relating it to previous experience. Let's see. We've got the primary visual cortex, which receives information from the eyes relating to the opposite side of the field of vision. So again, because this is the left hemisphere, it would receive information from the right field of vision. Let's see. All right, here's my second model, and this is the medial view of the right hemisphere. And again, we've got the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, and I've put the temporal lobe down here, which is more lateral, but to represent that it would be here. Okay. We've got the medulla and the pons, which is part of the myelencephalon, the cerebellum, the thalamus and the hypothalamus, the pineal body, septum pelliculum, the fornix, which evolves from the hypothalamus. We've got the anterior commiserate, which connects the right and left temporal lobes, I believe. And then here, let's see if you can see it. We've got the, I don't know if you can see that, paraterminal, move it, paraterminal gyrus, and the lamina terminus, kind of difficult to see, as well as the optic nerve and the chiasm. Okay, the singular superior frontal gyrus, the cingulate sulcus, the cingulate gyrus, all again related to the limbic system and emotions, and the let's see, the paracentral lobule, paracentral parietal lobe, preconus, pre-wedge, conus, wedge, calcarean fissure here, the lingula occipital lobe, little tongue, and the corpus callosum with the rostrum, genu, body, and the splenium of the corpus callosum, as well as the spinal cord. So that's the medial view of the right hemisphere. Okay, moving on, we've got the inferior view of the brain. And I'm trying to get it in screen, but and I didn't mention how I've got the anterior, right, left, and posterior directionals on each. This one, of course, is being the inferior view. You would have the right and left, whereas on this one you've got the superior, inferior, anterior, and posterior, because it's a medial view of the hemisphere. Okay, so back to this one. We've got the gyrus rectus here. This is the frontal pole. We've got the olfactory bulb and tract, and this is all part of the telencephalon, which is part of the forebrain, the telencephalon and diencephalon. We've got the olfactory sulcus, the orbital frontal gyrus, and again, I've attempted to demonstrate the gyrus or gyrus with raised clay. The temporal pole, collateral rhinal sulcus, the uncus, which is related to processing sense of smell in the olfactory cortex. The parahippocampus gyrus, temporal sulcus, I can't see that groove there, but it's there. The inferior. They're both the inferior temporal sulcus and the inferior temporal gyrus. Okay. Again, the diencephalon, the hippocampus, and mammary bodies, the mesencephalon, which is within the midbrain. Again, the occipital poles, the occipital temporal gyrus, and the interhemispheric sagittal fissure here. So that is the inferior view of the brain. Just some additional information about the using the inferior view of the brain. Within the telencephalon, we have the cerebral cortex, which contains the limbic system and the basal ganglion, again related to emotions. And we have the diencephalon, which contains the thalamus and the hypothalamus. Okay, and we'll see the hypothalamus there. Okay, in the midbrain, which is here, we have the mesencephalon, which contains the tectum, which is the roof, and the tegmentum, which is the covering. Okay. And then, not seen on this one, but seen in this one, we have the diencephalon, which contains the medulla and the pons. All right, and the spinal cord. Alrighty. Again, that is the inferior brain view. And last but not least, we have the superior view of the brain. Again, trying to sort of represent the gyrus and the sulcus. Used raised clay over a flat surface. So here we go. We've got the, again, the interhemispheric sagittal fissure, which is here. The superior frontal gyrus, serofrontal sulcus, midfrontal gyrus, okay, occipital pole. Here, we've got the fissure, and I should have indicated that. I made that in a darker color just to give it more, stand out more. Precentral sulcus, precentral gyrus, the central sulcus, postcentral gyrus, postcentral sulcus, superior parietal lobule, the inferior parietal lobule, and the intraparietal sulcus. So those are my 4 models. Again, thoroughly enjoyed, more than I thought I would. Completing, gained a wealth of knowledge about the brain, anatomy, and touched on the function. Learning more as I go, but again, well worth the effort. And I hope you appreciate it.